Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into something I think you'll find fascinating, the steel industry.
Steel,
Yep.
huh?
Specifically, we're going to try to learn how to analyze steel companies.
Oh, interesting. Using what?
Well, we're going to be using a guide by Dr. Vijay Malik.
Okay.
Now, steel itself, it's strong, sturdy, dependable, simple, right?
Yeah, you'd think so.
But the business of steel, oh boy, get ready for a wild ride.
I bet. Where do we even begin?
Well, first things first, the steel industry is cyclical, like a roller coaster.
Oh, yeah. When the economy's doing well, construction's booming, gotta have steel for those buildings, roads, bridges. Everyone's buying new cars, too. More steel.
Exactly. High demand, prices go up. But then the economy slows down,
Boom.
right? Steel industry feels it immediately.
And that's gonna make planning tough, right? I mean, if you're a steel company.
You said it,
Huh.
especially when it comes to capacity expansions.
Ah, yeah. Dr. Malik's guide actually mentions this report by Care Ratings. They found that companies often face downturns right after they've invested a ton of money in expanding their operations.
Oof, that's rough. So timing is like everything.
It really is. But it's not just the economic cycles, right? There's another big factor.
Oh, yeah, competition. The steel industry is crazy competitive. I mean, it's a global market. Everyone's vying for the same customers.
We're like a global steel cage match, right?
Exactly. And here's the thing, steel is essentially a commodity.
Right.
I mean, how do you differentiate yourself? Like R&I Japan, they had this report where they basically said it's really hard for steel producers to make their products stand out.
Makes sense. Everyone's selling the same basic thing, right?
Yeah. So how do they stand out?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're in a room full of people selling the exact same product,
Yeah.
you've got to get creative.
Right. Got to find a niche, offer something special.
Exactly. Dr. Malik's guide talks about how some companies try to produce like specialized steel.
Oh, interesting. Like tailored to specific industries.
Yeah, exactly. Different grades, properties, that sort of thing. Try to build some customer loyalty. But even then, you've got this other massive hurdle.
What's that?
The sheer scale of the steel industry. It's incredibly capital intensive.
Oh, yeah. Those steel plants are massive. Tons of machinery, mountains of raw materials. It's mind-boggling.
And expensive. Like crazy expensive.
Yeah, no kidding. According to ICRA, setting up a new steel plant, a greenfield one, with a capacity of 1 million tons can cost about 8,000 crore.
Whoa. That's not exactly pocket change.
Nope. And then you have to maintain those operations, keep the technology up to date, manage all the working capital. It's a constant juggling act.
Absolutely. Steel plants need huge inventories, raw materials, intermediate products, finished goods. It's nonstop.
Which is why I'm so intrigued by these minimills.
Minimals.
Yeah, Dr. Malik talks about them in his guide. They're like the nimble ninjas of the steel industry.
Ninja.
Yeah, kind of. They skip those resource-heavy steps of making steel from scratch.
Oh, interesting. How do they do that?
They focus on converting existing steel. They don't have to, stockpile iron ore and coal like the big integrated plants. They purchase what they need when they need it.
That makes them super adaptable. Got to be a huge advantage in such a cyclical industry.
Right. But even with those advantages, every steel company faces similar challenges. How do you thrive when you've got low pricing power, customers who can kind of dictate terms, and suppliers who hold the keys to your raw materials?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, that's where operational efficiency becomes critical.
Yeah, you've got to squeeze every bit of efficiency out of every stage of the process.
Absolutely. Got to figure out how to secure the best raw materials, maybe even acquire your own mines. And then there's the whole issue of plant location.
Oh, right. You can't just build a steel plant anywhere.
Nope. Location is strategic. Being close to your raw materials or to ports, depends on your import-export strategy, can make or break your cost structure.
Makes sense. Every rupee saved on transportation adds up.
Big time. And then there's the energy piece. Steel making needs a ton of power.
Right. Finding cheaper power sources, that's got to be a priority.
Totally. Whether it's captive power plants or waste heat recovery, maybe even renewable energy, that can be a real game changer.
It all comes down to, like you said, maximizing efficiency.
You got it. That's how you stay competitive in the global steel market. But there's more to it than just efficiency. Dr. Malik's guide also talks about diversification, spreading your risk.
Oh, yeah, like Not putting all your eggs in one basket. Makes sense.
Exactly. And he talks about different ways steel companies can do that, geographically, the types of customers they serve, even their production processes.
Got it. So lots of options.
Lots of options. He even talks about different customer types and how some are more stable than others, like institutional clients.
Institutional clients.
Yeah, like automobile manufacturers, they tend to offer more stability than, say, steel traders.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
I mean, a long-term contract with a car company sounds way less risky than dealing with traders.
Right, right. And then there's certain products that just seem to stay in demand no matter what the economy is doing.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, he mentions tin plates. Those are used in packaging. People always need packaging.
True. So it's not just about steel beams in construction.
No. And you know what else? Governments play a huge role in all of this.
Oh, right. How so?
Well, Dr. Malik talks about how countries use things like import duties and export incentives to influence their steel market. So that's another thing companies have to consider.
So it's like they're playing on a global chessboard.
Right.
With all these different pieces moving around.
Exactly. But there's this other trend he talks about that I found really interesting. It's about how bigger players tend to have the upper hand.
Oh, interesting. Like bigger is better.
Well, yeah, in a way. It's about economies of scale. Larger companies can produce more steel at a lower cost.
So they can outcompete the smaller guys.
Exactly. And they also have more financial resources to weather those downturns we talked about.
Right. So they're more resilient.
Yep. There was this report from CRISIL, actually, and they pointed out that during downturns, the big players often acquire struggling smaller companies.
So they not only survive, they actually come out stronger. That's wild.
It is, and this trend, it's happening everywhere, not just in developing markets, even in mature markets like Japan.
Wow. So it's a global phenomenon. But wait, we can't forget about all those other risks.
Oh, yeah, there's more. The regulatory stuff, the social aspects, environmental risks, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yikes. Like what?
Well, first off, governments have a lot of power in this industry. They can make or break a company with tariffs, mining policies, land acquisition hurdles.
Yeah, that's a lot to navigate.
It is. And then there's the environmental piece. The steel industry has a pretty big carbon footprint.
Right. And there's a lot of pressure to clean things up.
Exactly. So steelmakers have to adopt more sustainable practices. In fact, Dr. Malik's guide even mentions some plants that had to shut down because they couldn't meet those stricter environmental guidelines.
Wow. So the cost of non-compliance can be huge.
It really can. And then there's this other risk that you might not expect.
Ooh, what's that?
Forex risk. Currency fluctuations.
Oh, right. I guess that would mainly affect companies that import raw materials, huh?
It's actually a bit more complicated than that. While it's true that primary steel producers, the ones making steel from iron ore and coal, they face currency risk when they import coking coal.
Uh-huh.
But secondary steel producers can be affected too.
Really? I thought they sourced their raw materials locally.
They do. But their expenses are in local currency, while the selling price of their steel is often tied to the import parity price, which, you guessed it, is influenced by global exchange rates.
Oh, so even if they're not directly importing, they're still exposed. It's all connected.
Exactly. It's a complex web. But here's an interesting twist. Dr. Malik points out that secondary steel producers who use scrap metal, they have a kind of a natural hedge against Forex risk.
A natural hedge. How's that work?
Well, both the price of their raw material, scrap metal, and the price of their finished product, steel, are linked to international steel prices. So when currencies fluctuate, those prices tend to move together.
Ah, I see. So they're kind of insulated from those wild swings.
To some extent, yes. But there's a catch, of course.
Always a catch. Yeah.
Yep. Securing a reliable supply of scrap metal, that can be a major challenge. And just like with iron ore and coal, scrap prices can be pretty volatile too.
Because it's like one step forward, one step back.
Pretty much. But, the more we talk about this, the more I realize that the steel industry is like this microcosm of the global economy. It's got everything. Supply and demand, technology, geopolitics, environmental concerns.
It's all there. So, for our listener who might be thinking about investing in steel companies, what are the key takeaways? What should they be thinking about?
Well, first and foremost, remember that cyclical nature. It's a roller coaster. Booms and busts. Don't get too excited during the booms. And don't panic during the busts.
Right, gotta stay level-headed.
Exactly. Look for companies that are really efficient. Low costs. That's essential for survival in this market.
And diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Absolutely. And pay close attention to the regulatory landscape.
Mhm.
Governments can have a huge impact.
And as we talked about, don't underestimate the importance of sustainability. Companies that embrace those practices, they're going to be better positioned for the future.
It really is. It's fascinating. The more we dig into this, the more I realize just how complex the steel industry is.
Yeah, it's not just about, making steel.
Right. There are so many factors at play.
It's a global puzzle.
Mhm.
And for anyone thinking about investing in this industry, they really need to understand all the pieces.
Which is where Dr. Malik's guide comes in, right?
Exactly. It gives you that in-depth look at all the forces shaping the industry, helps investors make smarter decisions. Sounds like required reading for anyone interested in steel. So, knowing everything we've learned today, what would you say to our listener who's, maybe thinking about their next investment move?
That's a good question. I guess I'd ask them, what kind of investor are you?
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. I mean, are you looking for stability? Do you want to invest in those big established companies, the ones that can weather any storm?
The giants, yeah.
Right. Or are you more drawn to those smaller players, the mini-mills? They're agile, they can adapt quickly.
Two very different approaches.
They are. Or maybe our listener is really passionate about sustainability. They want to invest in companies that are leading the way in green steel production.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, or maybe they see potential in emerging markets, want to invest in companies that are positioned to benefit from all that infrastructure growth. There are so many possibilities.
It's amazing, really. And with all the insights we've gained today, our listener can approach this dynamic industry with, a whole new level of understanding.
That's the goal. Knowledge is power, especially in a market as complex as steel.
Well said. So, to our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep learning, keep exploring, and stay curious. Dr. Malik's Guide is an excellent place to start your deep dive into the world of steel.
Definitely.
And until next time, happy investing.